Today I thought I would share with you 10 simple acrylic painting tips that I use. So the first one that I do, number one, is this is a finished painting, and before I started it, quite pretty, I turn it around and I spritz it in the back with just plain water. And this makes it get really tight so that it doesn't bounce around when you're trying to paint. So that is a big tip I find, because a lot of times it would just bounce around too much, and so I like doing that every time I start a new project. The other thing I do is I put down my colors on a palette, whatever palette I'm using, but I like to separate the warm colors from the cool colors. So I can pick up a color without getting another color mixed in there. You can mix your own paints, but it's nice to be able to have them separate like that. So, you know, on this side is all your cool colors, and on this side is all your warm colors. So that is helpful. Number 3 is to have fresh water on hand. And I just use this little plastic container. It's full of paint, but the water in there is clean, so that whenever I'm painting, if I need some water, clean off a brush, I put it in there. Now, the other thing that I do have is a fresh glass container of fresh water, so that, let's say you're painting along and you've finding that you like something, but then, hey, you know, I don't like something happened and I don't like you don't like what you just did. So you just take some paper towel and you dip it in here, and then you can rub it off. I find if you do it quickly and right away, it comes off. Whatever you've done that you don't like, you can rub it off. Or let's say you're trying to experiment with something and it's like, I'm going to try this. You don't like it, get the water in there. It's acrylic paint. It comes off pretty easy if you do it right away. So that's number 3. Number 4 is to have plenty of paper towels on hand. Excuse me. Have lots of paper towels on hand for these kinds of things. If it gets on your hands or whatever, you spill it somewhere, you need these paper towels. So that's a good thing. Number 5 is, if you want to have your paints on your palette stay wet, because a lot of times, you know, sometimes you walk away, you're doing something else, or it's taking you a lot of time. Well, all I do is I spritz it with water, and that'll help it from it'll prevent it, I should say, from forming a film on tops, and it gives you some more time with it, so that when you're ready to paint, and you know, your next step on your painting, you're ready to go. Number 6 is check to see what paint you're using. And I'm not talking about brands. I'm saying about, is your paint transparent, opaque, or semi-transparent? The way to find that out is at the bottom here, you can see that there is a little square. And this one here shows that it is transparent. Okay? Here it's all filled in and it is opaque. And this one is half and half, so semi-transparent. And that makes a big difference depending on what you're doing when you're painting, what you're trying to create with your painting. Sometimes you want something to go on that's transparent because there's already other colors and you're just wanting to add a little bit more depth. And sometimes you want to cover it up completely and you want the opaque. So these kinds of things is important to know when you are painting. Number 7, have some kind of a palette. Now I have this one here, very pretty, very nice. I haven't used it yet. There is some paint on it. But really, the one that I'm showing you here with the colors on it, that's a pretty good one. It's pretty inexpensive. It's just palette paper. And when you're done with it, you rip off the page and you can go on to the next one underneath. It's pretty inexpensive and it does a pretty good job of it, I find. So that's pretty cool. Number 8 is mix colors when you need them. Again, going back to the palette, don't be mixing it a whole bunch ahead of time. You don't know, like maybe you change your mind. Maybe the painting's telling you something else in, you know, different direction that you want to go to. So mix the paints when you're about to create the painting, that part of the painting. And number 9, have different shapes of paintbrushes around. These are some of the ones that I use all the time. This one here is kind of a rounded with a pointed edge, a little bit of a point, and I find that is really, really helpful. This one here is rounded top but flat. You can see that, flat. And then you might want to have something a lot finer, so you want this with a bit of a tip. And I often also use a palette knife, and I've got different varying sizes of the palette knives. This is a kind of a small one, but you know, there's different ones depending on the kind of painting that you're working on. And number 10 is, remember not to use a lot of water on your paints, because if you put too much water, everything just waters down too much. It breaks the paint up way too much, and you just can't work with something when you see all those flecks in there. It looks terrible, and it's hard, and it becomes just too watery. Doesn't cover anything, doesn't give you any coverage. If you want to do a watercolor, well, there's watercolor paints for that. So try and remember only to use way less than 50%. 50% is the max that you should be using on acrylic paints. And so that's about it. So I hope these tips were helpful to you. Please subscribe and leave a comment and like my video. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Have a good day.